In the heart of Africa, where the red earth meets endless skies, lived a woman named Amara, whose smile could light up the darkest night, but whose family had nothing except love and hope. At 25 years old, she walked barefoot to fetch water from the distant well, her calloused hands telling stories of hard work that most people would never know. 3,000 miles away, in a gleaming city, two little boys named Marcus, age 7, and David, age 5, lived in a mansion so big that servants got lost in its hallways, and their father, Mr. Thompson, was only 32 years old, but already so rich he could buy entire countries, yet his sons had hearts colder than winter mornings. "Daddy, buy me that toy now," Marcus would demand as he threw expensive things on the floor, and little David would copy his big brother, breaking things just because he was bored and wanted attention. Their young father worked day and night building his empire after becoming a millionaire before age 30, but he never saw how his wealth was turning his little boys into spoiled children who thought people were servants to order around. When Amara turned 25, her grandmother told her, "Child, your heart is pure gold, and one day you will teach the world that kindness is the greatest treasure." But Amara just laughed, thinking she was just a poor village woman who could never change anything big. The storm came without warning when Mr. Thompson's business partner cheated him and stole millions of dollars, leaving the young father broke and ashamed overnight. "Pack everything, boys. We're moving to Africa, where Daddy has one last business venture," the 32-year-old father said with tears in his eyes as 7-year-old Marcus screamed, "I don't want to go. I want my toys." And 5-year-old David started crying and throwing himself on the floor, shouting, "This is scary, Daddy. I don't like changes." The mansion was sold, the cars were taken away, and the servants said goodbye with sad faces as the Thompson family boarded a plane to a small African town where their father hoped to start a mining operation. Meanwhile, in her village, Amara was teaching younger children how to read under the big baobab tree when her uncle ran up saying, "The white family with small children is coming to build a mine, and they will give jobs to everyone." But Amara felt something worried in her stomach, like when storm clouds gathered before heavy rain. She had heard stories about mining companies that promised gold, but left only empty holes and poisoned water behind them. When the Thompson family arrived in their rented Jeep, the entire village gathered to stare at these strange visitors who looked upset and tired from traveling. Marcus stepped out first, wearing expensive clothes covered in dust, and immediately started whining, "Daddy, this place smells funny, and I want to go home," while little David hid behind his father's legs saying, "I'm scared of all these people looking at us." Their father tried to smile and shake hands with the village chief, but his sons kept pulling on his clothes and demanding attention like they always did when they wanted something. Amara watched from behind her grandmother's hut and noticed how the two little boys seemed lost and confused, like baby birds that had fallen from their nest too early. "Those children need guidance," her grandmother whispered, "but not the kind their father thinks they need." And Amara wondered what she meant, because the boys clearly had more toys and nice clothes than any children in the village could ever dream of having. The next morning, trouble started when Marcus and David began exploring the village, but instead of being curious like normal children, they acted like little kings who thought poor people should serve them. 7-year-old Marcus saw old Joseph carving wooden toys and demanded, "Make me one right now." And when Joseph kindly explained he was making toys for village children who had no money, Marcus stomped his foot saying, "But I want one now, and Daddy says I can have anything I want." 5-year-old David was following his big brother's example because he saw Amara's little nephew Kofi playing with a ball made of rags and papers, and he grabbed it saying, "This is stupid, give me a real ball." And when Kofi started crying, David just dropped the torn ball and walked away like nothing happened. The village children stopped playing when the brothers came near, and the adults shook their heads sadly about how these little boys had no manners or kindness toward anyone they met. Amara had seen enough, and her heart felt heavy watching these lost little children who had everything except the most important lessons about caring for others. She walked up to Marcus and David as they sat under a tree, complaining about being bored, and said, "My name is Amara, and I want to show you something wonderful." But Marcus looked up with a frown and said, "Are you going to give us toys because we don't like anything here?" Little David nodded and added, "Yeah, nothing here is fun like our old house." And they both looked at her like she was just another adult who would disappoint them. But Amara smiled the same smile that lit up dark nights and said, "What I want to show you is more special than any toy you've ever had." And something gentle in her voice made the little boys curious enough to follow her, even though Marcus kept saying he was bored and David kept asking if they could go home soon. Amara led them to the other side of the village where old Mama Kessie sat alone outside a small hut, looking sad and tired. "Mama Kessie lost her husband and has no family to help her," Amara explained gently as she knelt down and began cleaning the old woman's yard, pulling weeds and sweeping dust while talking softly to her in their local language. Marcus and David watched with big confused eyes as Amara brought water for Mama Kessie and helped her cook a simple meal, and the old woman's wrinkled face changed from sadness to happiness like magic. "Why are you doing that?" 7-year-old Marcus asked. "She's not even your grandma and she can't buy you anything." But Amara looked up with dirt on her hands and said, "I help her because it makes my heart feel warm and happy, and when we help others, the whole world becomes more beautiful." The little boys had never heard a grown-up talk like this before, and they stood there feeling strange new feelings they didn't understand. Then Amara did something that made their little mouths fall open in surprise, as she pulled out a small cloth bag from her pocket and counted out coins that were probably all the money she had in the world. She gave the coins to Mama Kessie, saying, "Buy some medicine for your cough, Mama, and don't worry because friends help each other." And the old woman began crying happy tears while hugging Amara tight. Marcus felt something funny in his chest as he watched this poor lady give away her money to someone who needed it more, and little David's eyes filled with tears because he remembered all the times he had wasted food while other people looked hungry. "But why would you give away your money?" Marcus whispered. "Daddy says you should keep money for yourself." And Amara stood up, brushing dust from her simple dress, and said, "Because when you share what you have, your heart grows bigger, but when you keep everything for yourself, your heart gets smaller and sadder." The real change began that evening when little David couldn't sleep and kept thinking about Kofi's sad face after his ball was ruined. He tried to find materials to make a new ball, but his small hands had never made anything before, and everything fell apart, making him cry with frustration. Marcus heard his baby brother upset and came to help, but neither boy knew how to fix or make things because servants had always done everything for them. In the morning they found Amara, and Marcus said with his head down, "We want to make Kofi a new ball, but we don't know how." And David whispered so quietly she could barely hear, "We're sorry we were mean yesterday. We didn't mean to make him sad." Amara looked at these two little boys, who had probably never apologized in their whole lives, and saw something different in their young faces, like tiny seeds of kindness beginning to grow. Amara spent the next few days teaching Marcus and David how to use their hands to make things, and more importantly, how to use their hearts to care about others. She showed them how to weave grass into small baskets and how to help plant seeds that would grow into food for hungry families, and how to be gentle with animals and smaller children. At first the boys complained about getting their hands dirty and about how hard everything was, but slowly they began to smile when they finished making something useful. "Look, Amara, I made this all by myself," 5-year-old David said, holding up a wonky little basket, and Marcus laughed, saying, "Mine looks funny too, but I feel proud of making it." And Amara hugged them both, knowing that their little hearts were opening like flowers in sunshine. The other village children stopped being afraid and started including the brothers in their games, and the adults began smiling when they walked by, because everyone could see these spoiled little boys learning to be kind. The biggest test came when their father's mining project failed completely, and 32-year-old Mr. Thompson had to tell his sons, Boy's daddy made a big mistake and we don't have money anymore, and I don't know how we'll get home. Expecting them to cry and throw tantrums like they always did when things went wrong. But both Marcus and David surprised him by running to hug his legs tight, and Marcus said, "It's okay, Daddy, we like it here now, and little David nodded, saying, Amara taught us that having friends is better than having lots of toys." Their young father couldn't believe what he was hearing, because these were the same children who used to scream when their favorite TV show wasn't on, and now they were comforting him when everything seemed hopeless. That night Amara found the Thompson family sitting by a fire looking worried and scared, and she sat down beside them saying, "You're not alone because this village is your family now, and families always take care of each other." And Mr. Thompson felt tears in his eyes because he realized his little boys had learned more about life in this poor village than his millions of dollars had ever taught them. The transformation of Marcus and David didn't happen overnight, and there were many days when they struggled with their new life and wanted to go back to their old ways of getting everything they wanted. One morning Marcus woke up cranky and started demanding that his father buy him a new video game like he used to, and when Mr. Thompson gently explained they had no money for such things, Marcus threw himself on the ground crying, "I hate this place, and I hate being poor." Little David saw his big brother upset and started crying too, saying, "I want my old toys back, Daddy. Why can't we just go home to our big house?" And their father felt his heart breaking because he wanted to give his sons everything, but had nothing left to give them except love. Amara heard the commotion and came running to find the two little boys sobbing while their father tried to comfort them with tears in his own eyes. She sat down on the dusty ground and pulled both children into her warm embrace, saying, "I know you're sad and scared, but let me tell you a secret about happiness that took me many years to learn." Amara began telling them about her own childhood when her parents died in a terrible accident, and she was left with nothing but the clothes on her back and a heart full of sadness. "I was only 10 years old, and I cried every day wishing my mama and papa would come back and take care of me," she said softly while stroking David's hair as he sniffled against her shoulder. "My grandmother took me in, but we had no money for nice clothes or toys, and I felt sorry for myself for a long time, thinking I was the unluckiest girl in the world." Marcus stopped crying and looked up at Amara with big curious eyes, asking, "But you're always happy now, so what changed?" And Amara smiled, remembering those difficult days that had taught her so much about life. She continued, "One day I saw a little orphan boy who had even less than me, and instead of feeling sorry for myself, I decided to share my small piece of bread with him, and when I saw his face light up with joy, I felt something magical happen in my heart." The boys listened quietly as she explained how helping others had slowly healed her sadness and taught her that happiness comes not from what you have, but from what you give to those who need it more. The real breakthrough came during the village's annual harvest festival, when everyone gathered to celebrate the crops they had grown together through months of hard work and cooperation. Marcus and David had never seen anything like this celebration, where people danced and sang, not because they were rich, but because they were grateful for simple blessings like food and friendship and family. The children of the village performed traditional dances wearing colorful clothes made from local fabrics, and Marcus whispered to David, "They look so happy even though their clothes aren't expensive like ours used to be." And David nodded, saying, "Maybe pretty doesn't always cost lots of money." Amara overheard them and knelt down to their level, saying, "Would you boys like to learn one of our dances and join the celebration?" And even though Marcus felt shy at first and David was worried about looking silly, they both nodded because something about the joyful music made their feet want to move. Learning the traditional dance was harder than the boys expected because it required patience and practice and working together with other children, instead of being the center of attention like they were used to. Marcus got frustrated when he couldn't get the steps right immediately and wanted to quit, saying, "This is too hard, and I don't like making mistakes in front of people." But an older village boy named Django put his hand on Marcus's shoulder and said, "Everyone makes mistakes when learning something new, but that's how we get better and stronger." Little David was struggling too because his short legs couldn't keep up with the bigger children. But instead of laughing at him, the other kids slowed down and helped him learn the easier steps first. Amara watched from the sidelines with tears of joy in her eyes as she saw these two spoiled little boys learning their first lessons about patience and accepting help from others and working as part of a team, instead of always demanding to be first and best at everything. The night of the festival performance, Marcus and David wore simple clothes, made by the village women from local materials, and for the first time in their lives, they didn't care about having the most expensive or fanciest outfits. They danced with the other children under the bright African stars, while their father watched with pride and amazement at how much his sons had changed just a few months. "Look, Daddy, we're really dancing," David called out with the biggest smile anyone had ever seen on his little face, and Marcus added, "And we learned it all by ourselves with help from our friends," emphasizing the word friends because he had never had real friends before coming to the village. Mr. Thompson felt overwhelmed with emotion as he realized his sons were experiencing something he had never been able to buy them with all his millions, which was the pure joy of belonging to a community that cared about them not because of their money but because of who they were becoming as people. After the festival, the boys' attitudes continued to improve, but they still faced challenges as they learned to live without the luxuries they had always taken for granted. When the rainy season came, their small house leaked, and they had to sleep on wet floors sometimes, and Marcus complained, "In our old house we never had to worry about rain coming inside." But Amara taught them how to patch holes with mud and leaves, and showed them that working together to solve problems could actually be fun. David missed his soft bed and fancy bathroom, but he learned to appreciate the simple pleasure of washing in the river with the other children and sleeping under handmade blankets that kept him just as warm as his expensive ones used to. Their father struggled too because he was used to solving every problem with money, and now he had to learn practical skills like fixing things with his hands and growing food in the garden and building furniture from wood that the village men taught him to cut and shape. The biggest test of their transformation came when a group of wealthy tourists visited the village and saw Marcus and David playing happily with the local children in their simple clothes with dirty hands and bare feet. One tourist woman looked shocked and asked Mr. Thompson, "Are those your children? Why do you let them play in the dirt like that? And where are their proper shoes?" And Marcus overheard and ran to his father saying proudly, "Daddy, tell her we like playing in the dirt because that's where the best games are, and bare feet help us run faster." David joined in adding, "And we don't need fancy shoes because Amara taught us that happy feet are better than expensive feet," which made the tourist woman look even more confused and concerned. Mr. Thompson felt a moment of doubt, wondering if he was doing the right thing by letting his sons live so differently from how they were raised. But then he saw their bright, happy faces and realized they had never looked this joyful or confident when they owned everything money could buy. Another tourist man tried to give Marcus and David money, feeling sorry for these poor American children, but both boys politely refused, and Marcus explained, "Thank you, sir, but we don't need money to be happy. We have something better." And when the man asked what could be better than money, David said, "We have friends and family and people who love us for who we are, not what we own." The tourists left shaking their heads, unable to understand how children could be happy without material possessions, but Amara smiled proudly, knowing that Marcus and David had learned one of life's most important lessons. That evening she found the boys helping their father prepare dinner over an open fire, and Marcus was teaching David how to stir the pot without burning the food while chattering excitedly, "David, you're getting so good at cooking, and tomorrow I'll show you how to make bread like Mama Cassie taught me." And Amara's heart swelled with joy, seeing how naturally they had learned to care for each other. The seasons changed, and Marcus and David grew taller and stronger and wiser as they embraced their new life completely and found joy in simple, daily activities that they never would have appreciated in their old wealthy lifestyle. Marcus discovered he had a talent for storytelling and would gather the younger village children around him in the evenings to tell them tales about brave animals and kind heroes, while David became known for his gentle touch with sick animals and would spend hours caring for injured birds and helping mama goats with their babies. Their father watched his sons develop these beautiful qualities and realized that losing his fortune had been the greatest gift he could have given them, because it allowed their true characters to shine through without being hidden by material possessions and entitled attitudes. The village elders began to speak of the Thompson family with respect and affection, saying, "They came to us as strangers, but now they are truly our people." And when other business opportunities arose that could have made the family wealthy again, Mr. Thompson chose to stay because he understood that some treasures are worth more than gold. Years passed, and the Thompson family became such an important part of the village community that it was hard to remember a time when they hadn't been there, sharing in both the struggles and celebrations of daily life. Marcus grew into a teenager who spent his free time teaching younger children how to read and write, while David became known throughout the region for his skill in caring for animals and helping farmers with their livestock. Their father established a small school where Amara served as the head teacher, and children from neighboring villages would walk for hours just to attend classes and learn from the woman whose wisdom and kindness had transformed an entire community. The school grew slowly but steadily, funded not by wealthy donors, but by the collective efforts of everyone who contributed what they could, whether it was labor or materials, or simply time spent helping children learn. Mr. Thompson often reflected on how different his life had become and would tell visitors, "I once thought success meant having more money than I could spend, but now I know success means having a purpose that makes the world a little bit better." And people would see him working alongside villagers he now considered his dearest friends and neighbors. Marcus grew up to become a teacher and storyteller who traveled to other villages, sharing the lessons he had learned about finding happiness in simple things and helping others discover their own capacity for kindness and generosity. David became a veterinarian who provided free care to animals throughout the region and was beloved by farmers and children alike for his gentle manner and deep understanding of how to heal both physical wounds and broken spirits. Amara married a kind man from a nearby village and had children of her own, who grew up hearing the story of how two spoiled little boys had learned to find joy in giving rather than receiving. The village prospered and grew as more families were drawn to a community where people truly cared for one another, and where children learned that wealth comes not from what you own, but from the love you share and the lives you touch with kindness. And whenever visitors asked about the secret to their happiness, the villagers would smile and tell them about a wise woman named Amara who had shown them all that the richest people in the world are those who understand that everything we have is meant to be shared with others who need it more than we do.